Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brian Nathanson.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And as you can see, we have a sparse crowd for this session, so you are welcome to join us move forward. This was a tech talk over in the tech talk area, but there was enough interest that we decided to bring it in here, so you're welcome to come forward if you'd like. Thank you very much for coming and listening to us talk about 15.1. How many of you, by show of hands, were in the last session, the roadmap session? Okay, so we're going to be building off of some of what Kurt talked about in that session here, and then we're going to bring up some folks to talk to you about the value of 15.1 specifically, the release that's currently out there as the GA release, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the state of PPM, talk about who is Nicole, and then talk about adaptive project management, because that was really the focus of the 15.1 release, right? And this is essentially similar to what Kurt was talking about, right? About this whole remote control paradigm, right? The idea that what you want to do is you want to innovate, not iterate, right? And the idea that you have something, it serves a purpose, it works really great, it's simple, it's easy, it's intuitive. And then what you do is you go ahead and you complicate it, because instead of actually innovating and changing processes as they evolve, you end up just adding another button, then adding another button, and then adding another button. And those of you who have been with us the whole ride know how it all works. But if you just came in now, you'd be looking at it and going, I don't know what all that does, right? So the intention is that we want to make it an experience that is intuitive and accessible for people who are coming to it now, because one of the things that we found in our research is things like this, right? Project managers in the relationship business, but the tools are not. The tools are data-driven and instead of interaction-driven, right? For team members, using PPM solutions is a lot like doing your taxes. You know you have to do it, but it's about as painful as it can possibly be, right? And that as PMOs, you have all this data and it's really hard to get insights out of it because it's tough to see the output for what all information you're putting in, right? And really, it all comes down to this one side here, which is basically that we've had a historical overemphasis on process and procedures, and we've undervalued things like engagement, right? Intuitiveness, human factors in our enterprise systems, right? Much like Mike Gregor talked about this morning. The idea is that we no longer have the flexibility of having our enterprise systems treat people like machines. We now need to treat people like people in order to engage them and to attract the right people for our organizations. Quality control, budgeting, and such are still important, right? But we also have to take into account all of those other factors as well. Now, the thing is, that sounds kind of like Agile, right? For those of you who are Agile, how many people in here are Agilists or have followed Agile, right? Okay, that sounds kind of like Agile, right? Which is great for your software developers and your engineers, but for the business, even commonly accepted Agile techniques are often like, that's too much stuff. It's the ceremonies, which is really a word for process, right? You know, stand-ups and so forth. It's like, no, you know what? I have a few things I want to do. Let me get them done. Give me an easy way to organize it, and we can move forward. And so that's what this is, adaptive project management for Nicole, Agile for the rest of us, because Nicole is a project manager. She's a subject matter expert in her area. She's likely comes from the business, not from technology, although you could certainly see some technology groups that might use the functionality. She wants to engage her team effectively, does not have the time for a lot of process, and also wants to use tools that engage her and her team, right? So with that, we've put out the adaptive project management functionality in 15.1. This is kind of the eye chart summary of all of the different features that are in that. And in addition, we also put out the new timesheet that is intended to make it easier for team members to feel like it's not tax time whenever they have to do their timesheet. Okay? And so that's kind of the level set, or kind of the setup for 15.1 and improving the lives of you and your users. And so now I'd like to bring up the panel so that we can talk about it in more real terms. Okay?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Doug Page. I'm an advisor with CA, and I'll be moderating the panel this afternoon.
My name is Eric Gingras from CAMSO. I'm a PPM analyst. Brian Reed, I work for CA and our CA PPM services organization.
I'm Patrick Kim. I'm with International Games Technology, responsible for our portfolio and global resource management.
And I'll just start off by saying we're going to leave some time at the end for questions. There's a microphone right here that you guys can use to ask us questions. The whole session is being recorded, so we want to make sure that people can hear the questions. So let's kick it off. Brian, we saw during Kurt's presentation, he referenced the beta program, now the validation program. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about what that program is and how it helped us in 15.1?
Sure, absolutely. So we had a number of our customers, approximately 3 dozen customers, who participated with us during customer validation activities. And what that was exposure to early pre-release builds of the software that allowed us to get feedback in real time about what it is that we were doing, about whether or not it was adding value, and about whether or not there were additional things that we could do to optimize it further in the time frame that we were making the development happen. And so 15.1 reflects that. There are definitely things that are in it that were influenced by that process and by the inputs that were given to us by customers during that validation process. And so that is a process that we intend to continue to do for each of our subsequent releases.
That's great. And Patrick, seeing what Brian showed us for 15.1, what is the executive view to say, what is the importance of this for an organization?
Well, I think, Nicole says it best, right? So I'm not a project manager. I run a large organization, and the ability to build dashboards to a granular level that I need in order to make quantitative business decisions is important. To do that easily, I don't have a degree in engineering, so I don't want to be going into code and trying to build these dashboards. Rather, I like the idea of widgets and drag and drops. I saw that I can have an avatar up there, so that will be pretty cool for me. It's just more an executive view of what's happening in our portfolio, and projects are investments. So to be able to see that on a global perspective is going to be very valuable for us.
I think also one of the things that we were talking about this morning at breakfast too is the idea of that, what we were talking about engagement, right, and attracting and retaining talent as well. And the idea that what we want to do is provide an experience that is consumer grade, because we actually are in an innovation era, right, where top talent is tough to find, and there are people making decisions based upon, oh, well, you use that tool, well, sorry, we actually like this tool set we can use over here, right? And so it is important, we think, to also not only provide it in ways that are easy for you to use, but are also going to help you as an executive be able to get the types of folks that you're looking for, right?
That's right. Today, I use a lot of data to make decisions and make recommendations on investment, not the least of which is hiring talented leaders and engineers. The expectation with this migration sometime in CY17 for us is going to be a major lift. It's a major behavioral, cultural investment for us. So we've got a lot of expectations, and in conversations with CA, we're feeling pretty good about this. The ability to migrate from a highly customized system to what 15X is offering is very important to us. We've got a very large portfolio of projects that are active all the time. And the idea of changing the engines on a plane in flight is not attractive. So we're very interested in how easy it is to migrate this tool. The fact that it's got some classic view versus the new GUI content, and that's really what's got us interested in this right now.
And Eric, maybe from CAMSO's view, you could tell us what were the thinking that went in for you guys to decide to upgrade to 15.1?
Yeah, there's a few things. One of the things is we did implement in 2014. During the implementation, we had training with user, we had numerous sessions, we built documentation, and one of the major things that went out, they liked that seeing their capacity, their demand, they like the data was centralized right now, but the weaker point was really the interface complexity, and they sometimes get intimidated by the interface. So they were going like, okay, what do I need to put my financials, what do I do? Okay, you click that little triangle there beside properties and you go, and this was the biggest point we had, the learning curve of the tool. The other thing, Brian was implicated in the validation program, so this helped us a lot gain confidence on the system and reassure us also on the potential issue we could have. So implementing the tool, of course there's a new user interface, but the rest, the classic version is still there. So getting from 14.3 to the new to 15.1 for us was no risk. Also, during the validation program, they took our database, they tested some stuff and things like that. So before 15.1 was ready, we saw that it was not an issue with that.
And that's
go ahead.
And that was really key for us, was to make sure that, since we know that PPM is tied into a lot of your SOX compliance or governance processes, one of the things we are trying to do is to reduce, if not completely eliminate, the risk of moving to those new releases. As Kurt mentioned during the session, the classic system sits on its own, and as we move through releases, it should continue to get more and more stable, because all of our new development is focused in our new user experience items that are in a separate layer and that can be chosen to turn on or off as you're ready, right? So the idea is that even if you're not ready to use some of the new functionality, maybe it would be too much change for your organization, maybe there's something that we're missing that you need to have added, but you can still take the core product in an upgrade and basically treat it like a patch, because it's really just fixing functionality in the core product, and be able to be ready whenever you want to turn it on. And so that was part of it.
Yeah, that's something I hear a lot about as I go out to different user groups and interact with different customers. One of the biggest things that they're concerned about is how do they get that user adoption? How do they leverage the benefits that resonate for some groups within their organization that speak to 15.1 and that new user experience versus the classic? And we have big enterprises like a lot of you represent or work in. It's not a one-size-fits-all. What I think is really cool is that I remember from back when we were designing this from a product development perspective, this is a purpose-built design. That feature alone saying, we want to make sure we can allow you, as in your constituents, to be able to go in and say, we want to turn it on for this group and not turn it on for this group, because of the breadth and the training and the potential retraining that you have to do in your organizations. As this functionality starts to resonate and the new user experience resonates. So it's really cool to see as we pressure test this and people come on board to 15.1 that it's really panning out the way we thought it would.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, Eric, you had a story about the difference in the training preparation between the new 15.1.
Yeah, it's really different. When we implement 13.3, during the training, we've built a Kappa capsule, we've built handbook, we've built a website, a SharePoint to get the documentation, say, okay, you need to load a role, what do? You need to do your status report, what do you do? So it's kind of a Google Map thing, click there, and you're to the destination. Right. And right now with the 15.1, we don't, it's not everybody that uses the new UX, but some new business unit that we are implementing the tool right now are using that. And when I do training, what I do is I say, take 5 minutes, play with it, create a project, and then I come back with the person and do the training. And there's actually no documentation that I'm using. It's mostly person gets it's so intuitive. So I nearly don't have anything to show them. To create a task, to add a team member. It's pretty intuitive. So that was a good point for us.
Absolutely.
And Brian, in the field, how are you seeing customers approach this upgrade to 15.1?
Yeah, we're seeing some really cool trends. There's really two things that jump to mind as I kind of look at those commonalities across the entire install base and prospects both. And the first and foremost is the opportunity to reboot. That's the one I'm hearing more often than others. Now, if you think of the 1,000 customers that represent the PPM population today, a lot of them have gone down different journeys, and whether that's 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it may be, they're saying, hey, we've somehow along that journey, we got off the guardrails, right? We kind of went off the track, and they're taking the advantage of 15.1 to say, that's a great thing to kind of do two different things at once. I can get reset, whether it be because the drivers could be a variety of things. Maybe they're thinking about going to SaaS from on-premise. We heard that a lot. And there's there's a need there to be SaaS compliant around your configuration. So they're saying, hey, great, we're trying to get SaaS compliant, and oh, by the way, we want to take advantage of the new functionality. So they're saying we can reboot and kind of pile these things together and let 15.1 be that catalyst to take us there and be the justification internally. So that's been really, really cool. The other one is adoption. And I think the one thing that every one of us struggles with is, while PPM is as cool as it is, right? And it can do so much, the power under the hood, if you will. Getting end user adoption at the end of the day is what makes a difference for your PMO, for your data integrity, the intrinsic value that the solution offers to the business, right? Patrick, if you're thinking about your organization and you're making your business decisions from an executive level, you got to say, I want to make sure all the projects are there. I want to make sure my people are updating that information in a timely fashion. And that only happens when you have adoption. And adoption happens when they say, hey, I like this, right? I want to engage in the app. I want to have my whole team putting information in, not just the project manager, right? And so I think 15.1 really has given us a good platform to be able to do that. And that's what I'm hearing across a lot of our customers.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So we've been PPM since 2008. A lot of customization, and what we have today is that remote control times 10. It's very intimidating to new users that join the organization, to folks that come in, from the street, new hires, or from acquired companies. It's a very mature organization, and I think that we've gotten to this point because we're very data driven, and we've created this behemoth that is very intimidating. It's not the easiest system in the world to use. So to be able, and SOX in our world is now overtaken our business and is on par with, frankly, the portfolio that we deliver. So it's made for a very complex operating environment. The idea that we can migrate to another version, possibly reset, is very attractive. The idea that we have this legacy view, which everybody is used to, we can do this migration, and we won't see immediate organ rejection from the group, from the organization, is great. And the idea that you can switch between this classic view and the new GUI, I think is going to be very, very attractive to the organization itself, and will help us with the benefit proposition in terms of adoption.
And Eric, I know when we talked before, you said like some of the quotes from some of your end users was like something you'd see for a film. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the response you got from people who were actually using the solution.
Actually, when we implement the 15.1, I was traveling to Europe to do the implementation in the construction and the material handling group, so the two business units. And I just got the 15.1 installed on the dev server before leaving, taking the plane. So I trained the folks on the classic version, and I also took the opportunity to show them the new version and where it was going. And like the project manager was saying, in the entire presentation, when I got excited was when you show us that. Yeah. Because they did try implementing 3 times a PPM solution in these areas and had lots of problem getting the data in. So that was a big point for them. And also people wanted to change the time management system, so the time entry, we're not using CA PPM right now. So we got back some user story in to transfer the timesheet entry inside CA PPM with the interface. The other point, it put pressures on you guys. It's they say, okay, I have that great interface, but what happened to my fields and my custom stuff? So they are really interested in moving forward and being able to do everything in the new interface.
They all want to see Kurt's presentation too.
Yeah, the presentation did.
Exactly, and that is the goal, right? The intention is to eventually get to the point where we have all of that functionality migrated over. That is the ultimate goal. Everybody should rest assured that is the ultimate goal. However, as Kurt also mentioned, right, rebuilding the engine of the plane while you're flying it, because we can't be disruptive of your business, because we can't go ahead and just toss everything out and build something completely new from scratch. It is an incremental process. It takes a significant amount of time, but we are doing it as quickly as we can while still preserving the integrity of the system the way it currently is. And so that's part of the idea.
And as mentioned earlier, the business unit, when you do an implementation, they have their status report. They want this field, this field, this field, and those custom stuff. But during the implementation, they say, okay, we'll go with that, the new version. It's enough for us for now, and when later we might add some stuff. Yeah. But just to get the PMs, get the data in and stuff like that, it did realign a little bit of what was a must. Maybe it wasn't such a must.
Once they saw the interface, they changed their mind of what a must was, which is good. That's great.
That's good.
I think another door that's getting opened with 15.1 here is the opportunity to go from IT into the business. And this is one of those things that I know we've been very sensitive to over the years, because I think it's really more of a stigma than anything else, where we focused on IT from a product perspective. We sold into the IT part of the organization, and it was difficult, I think, for us, more from a conversational perspective than anything else, to make sure that we were giving equal representation to the business side of organizations. And as you look at the user experience that's represented by 15.1, if that's something you've done before or tried before, if you represent a PMO or just have responsibility for managing PPM within your organization, I think 15.1 kind of reopens that door and says, we can revisit that conversation. Because if you have a marketing PMO as an example, or some other business operational group that wants to be a part of your overall PPM solution, but they don't have the same discipline, right? Or maybe the same PMP kind of staff inside of their departments because of the functional role they serve in the organization. This is a good opportunity to say, hey, let's go back and have that conversation. This kind of experience in 15.1 really speaks to your personas that make up your organization when it comes to project management or just running projects.
And to that point, right, and I think I have a presentation that I delivered a couple weeks ago, and I said this part of it is the duh presentation. I'm going to tell you something you already know, but then I'm going to really challenge you. Are you really doing it, right? You might hear what Brian's saying. It's like, okay, yeah, IT, business, or have we talked to our business users? But no, really, have you talked to your business? Like, because it's amazing how many customers we talk to these days that are basically like, oh yeah, that group over there is looking for a PPM solution. Yeah. Sometimes you know, sometimes you don't. But wouldn't it be great if you could leverage additional value out of an investment you've already made by expanding it to another group?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I was in Texas the other week, and we were there as an account team talking to a very, very large customer, but the people we were talking to definitively worked in the IT organization, and we weren't even talking to them about PPM as a product. We were there representing a broader part of the CA portfolio. And the interesting part was when we started talking about where does your intake come from? How do you receive projects as an IT organization? We saw things just starting to click, right? He was like, well, I kind of just get them. And we just, when we talk about budgeting, we just put some IT funds in there to make sure we've got the IT portion of the said projects covered. But he hadn't stopped to think, how do I really connect that strategy, that corporate strategy and the business funding to the stuff that I'm taking, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where the whole dynamic started to change. And so that's evolved into a good conversation and how we can partner with them. But it's an interesting thing. I think, Brian, to your point, it's, don't assume you're doing it, or go back and have on a regular cadence, right? Pressure test yourself and make sure you're doing some of those best practices, and are we really having those conversations?
Right. And especially if you're one of those organizations where, like Mike Rigor talked about this morning, about technology is seeping into everything that we do, even historically things that never had to do with software, all of a sudden are becoming software things, right? And so now it's an idea of, okay, well, how's that being managed? Who's managing it? Has that been accounted for? Do you have it reflecting against your resource capacity? If you have rogue IT funding because organizations have their own discretionary budgets that happen to be getting spent on technology, right? How are you handling those types of activities? Gartner estimates that more than half of IT spend next year is going to be outside of the traditional IT channel. So it's like, okay, well, what are we doing? So this is all geared toward the idea of we need to make it accessible for people so that they're going to use it, so that we can keep track of what's happening and keep that transparency and visibility that folks like Patrick depend on to be able to make the executive decisions at the top.
Totally on board.
There you go.
Like I was saying, we in our company, in our PMO, have built this enormous remote control. It's very complex, and we've done that because we do a lot of data analytics, a lot of demand capacity planning. We are pretty much zero-sum organization. We've got about 1,000 employees that we keep utilized 100% of the time, 86% of the time, but that accounts for training and vacations, et cetera. So demand capacity is very important. And in the current version we're in, since 2008, we've made our own modifications. 15.1, if we have an easier way to do that, it will allow for easier adoption by organizations outside of our very mature PMO inside of IGT to take on this tool. And it will expand the dashboards outside of the delivery organization to the internal IT groups, to marketing projects, et cetera, which is, again, I can't say this enough, so attractive to the executive level that is looking at all of these projects as investments. Not just the IT deliveries that we're doing for our customers, but the internal investments around internal IT who don't use the tool today, marketing who, if there were an easier interface, would be able to use this tool. We would have centralized reporting. We're very excited about it, very.
So Brian, you work with a lot of customers. We heard Eric talk about the reasons why they did upgrade, like having faith in the roadmap and being part of the beta program. When you see customers that don't upgrade, what are the reasons that they might not be moving?
Yeah, great question. This comes up almost every discussion, and certainly every user group that we talk about. We were in Michigan user group 2 months ago roughly, and we actually did a workshop to kind of frame this out on whiteboards. We tried to use some of our agile practices where we're teaching ourselves, right? So, but we simply asked gave them everyone sticky notes, put up a simple axis in there and said, when's the last time you upgraded and what are the barriers to upgrading, right? And so everybody sat there, roughly 25, 30 people in that workshop, and they started listing things out and we clustered them and had a good discussion. Customization's number one, without a doubt. And that's something that I think I have a lot of empathy for, because people introduce customizations for the best of reasons, right? They try to use the product, they have business practices that are challenging them, they're trying to find the best way forward, but nevertheless, they'll create these customizations, and what ends up happening is those just compound, right? It's kind of like you go off the slope, right? You do one thing and then you add another one, and before you know it, you've got a whole cluster of them. And what we're finding is those customers feel like they're backed into a corner. Yeah, they've done all these customizations, then they want to do an upgrade, and they realize that creates all those complexities are preventative, right? So they have to do those regression testing, they have to use services to help them find a way forward. So customizations is really holding them back. Here's what I think lesser known secret. There are a number of tools available to customers today that you can actually work with us and partner and say, we can help you work through those customizations. You can find out which one of those are preventative. Maybe there are workarounds within the product that have evolved since the version you're on. So let's help share that knowledge with you and kind of do that partnership. There are other things that we can look at and say, okay, is that one still relevant anymore? We were with, I guess I can't really name customers, a very, this would want to even be intuitive, a very large car company in Detroit, go figure. But we were with them the other day, and they had a list of over 100 customizations that basically identified weren't even relevant anymore. But the business and the PMO and the CA PPM kind of administrators of the product hadn't really come together and been able to facilitate that discussion to identify that weren't relevant anymore. So certainly customization is undoubtedly number one that's preventative. The other one is the amount of regression testing that people feel like they do. Now, if you think about what the standard is, we talked about this a couple times, most PPM customers will upgrade on average every 12 to every 18 months, right? If you look at the whole population. What we found is, so if you think 18 months ago to where we are today, what 15.1 illustrates, there's been a tremendous number of improvements from a product management perspective, technical debt that we've paid down in the product. Upgrading now is not the same as it was 18 months ago. And I was in our welcome reception last night, I actually had customers coming up to me after they came out of some of the sessions and they said, wow, I have a whole lot more confidence today in the quality of the product, of this release, that I won't have to do as much time, spend as much time investing in regression testing as I had to do last time. And so I think that's another big piece that will improve the cadence of upgrading.
But the longer you wait between the upgrade, isn't it getting more complex to, because the step from 14.2 to 14.3, that's not huge, but when you're at 12 and you go to 15.1, must be a lot more testing there.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, one of the other things we did recently as an internal exercise, I'm not sure if this is outwardly facing. If not, we'll get it there. But we recently did what we call a battle card internally, but it was around 15.1 specifically. And one of the most valuable parts, just think of a one-page PowerPoint slide that gives you some of the artifacts around 15.1. One of the coolest things there is in the bottom half of it is an upgrade map. And what it shows you is version by version, the number of hops or amount of processes you have to run if you're going from, let's say, 13x to 15.1 by comparison of 14x to 15.1. It used to be, and many of you might have experienced this, you used to have to do multiple hops to do an upgrade depending on where you were starting from and where you were trying to go to. And our engineering organization and product have really taken that to heart to where now upgrading to 15.1 in most cases is a single hop. It's one move, one time through the process. So again, that really speaks to making it lighter, easier, faster to do an upgrade now than it used to be.
And I know, Eric, you had spoken to us previously about your upgrade experience and your upgrade process. Maybe you could just take a minute to talk about what you do to upgrade.
We are a very small organization. I'm the only one involved on the system, so it's not as complex as in your organization. So it's pretty simple. So I get it installed on a dev environment. I do the testing myself. Normally, it's not a long process. I reserve 2 or 3 days for that, and then I move that to the test environment and to the production environment. With the upgrade, as I have one issue that appear every upgrade, like a customization we did on the risk. So I know that every time I do an update, I have to change some fields. But from time to time, it's always pretty easy on our side going from. And we know we had recommendation to wait for the second patch at every upgrade from numerous like Rigo or people around. So most of the time we did wait for a second patch. This time, since we were with the validation program, we say we get engagement with CA that we will try it as soon as it gets out and do the testing on that one.
Great. So we've got about 10 minutes left. Let's open this up for questions. We've got a very good panel here. We've got 2 customers. We have product management. We have services. So if anyone has any questions, this is a great time to ask it. So feel free to come to the microphone and fire away at this group with a lot of knowledge.
Ashutosh Nagle, IHG. We are on 14.3 right now, and as you all know, 14.3 supports both business objects as well as JasperSoft. So I understand in the next version, JasperSoft is the only reporting tool that remains. So does anybody have any comments on how it impacted your users when it only supported one tool and not the other one? Was there a lot of effort involved in actually converting all those reports, how users received JasperSoft and that kind of stuff, if somebody can talk to that? Thank you.
Sure. Can I go first?
Go ahead, Brian.
Sure, happy to. So very impactful. We know that JasperSoft, I think, offers you a lot of flexibility relative from a reporting perspective, thinking of the data warehouse, the obvious pieces. Again, I think part of the value we add to you in this session is letting you know some things maybe you're not aware of. And specifically what I know we're doing in services is part of our global delivery organization has a utility that helps do that conversion process from business objects into JasperSoft. I think that the statistics that we share today is roughly when you run some of those scripts on those in discrete reports, it's about a 60% conversion. I know that we've been investing in that over the last couple months, and while I don't think I'm safe in saying what the prediction is going to be, our testing I will say is going to give us a significant improvement, and that will be done by December is what we're shooting for. So what we can help you with is say if you've got a library of reports, right, everybody does, but if you think of I've got 10, 20, 30 types of reports, maybe it's even larger, the more you have, the more help we can provide, in the sense that we can take that, run those scripts and do some of that conversion where we can convert 60+% of those reports into a JasperSoft format. So what I'm really trying to share with you is you don't have to go it alone. You don't have to take an organization that's just yourself, right? Or a couple people trying to support the entire application. You can kind of partner and say, I can do that, and I can do that with a lot less effort than I thought it might be. And it's a great question because so many people are using reporting as the constraint that's holding them back. And I think it's well deserved because how important it is, but it's a lot easier than you think it might be. So talk to us a little bit more about that.
Thank you. And does it handle user-defined reports as well as the customers that you have rolled out for the organization?
User-defined, meaning the advanced reporting types of reports?
Yeah, so if users have some reports that they build themselves, the power users, does that utility take into account and migrate those also over into JasperSoft, or just out of curiosity?
It'll be the ones you have published in PPM, right? Okay. So if you go to the reports tab in the drop-down, whatever's in that library there, think of those.
Great. So if you publish the Webby report to PPM, it would pick it up and be able to use the conversion.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I will also give a shout out to Eric, who's become a bit of an expert in this area. So if you want to know about transitioning, he gave a presentation to the Canadian user group on user adoption through better reporting and creating JasperSoft reports. So you can talk to him one-on-one after.
I wrote some stuff also in the community for like creating pie chart with JasperSoft, handling the colors and stuff like that. So there are people that can help you out. That you can contact me also.
Yep.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Alan Helms. I'm with Swift. We're a new PPM rollout. We're going to be going live with 1,000 users in January. Okay. One of the things that we're investing in to make it work better is Kappa. And I heard you mention, Eric, having a lot of investment in Kappa and procedures and everything around that. Are we going away from that? Should we be careful about what we're investing in Kappa, or is Kappa still fitting into the overall roadmap for PPM?
I would say depend on the organization. On our side, there's some user that do use Kappa that go there for a reminder. What did the most in our case was having handbooks, like real simple handbooks. Kappa is a very good tool, but you have to be able to maintain it. So when they change the version or the interface, you have to have somebody that maintain that. Otherwise, you lose the advantage over the time. So I would say it's a good tool, but you have to think about long term. Can you maintain that in a long term fashion?
And I think also, sometimes Kappa has been misunderstood. Kappa's real intent was to provide process and policy context to the interface. Now, if that also happens to mean that you have custom fields added that are part of your policy or procedures, then that would allow you to capture those. But really, it was intended to allow somebody, it's like, okay, why am I even doing this? So I know what to put in here. So it allows you to have configured your help so that it explains in the context of your business what's supposed to be happening. That context can be useful regardless of how intuitive the interface is. Yep. Now, that being said, for the step procedures, the hope is that our designs are going to be intuitive enough that you can get away without most of the step procedures, because that is what we're trying to do with the design. So there's some instances where you would, and then there are some instances where if it's really all about creating a new step procedure because you added a whole bunch of additional configurations, that's probably something we might want to revisit or talk about.
Yeah, I'd add another piece to that, because I think Kappa is one of the greatest assets that you can have when it comes to trying to roll out PPM to an enterprise. Right, when you think of thousands of users, when you think of multiple business units or PMOs within an enterprise, you have a lot of different nuances there, a lot of different groups that you're trying to familiarize with how to use a new technology, how to do various tasks which seem like blocking and tackling to a lot of folks. And I'll tell you how I've done that in the past. Kappa has, first of all, the library itself, I think, is very robust. It's 100 topics last time I checked, thereabouts. All the different categories, from how to complete a status report to how to add something more intricate like a dependency on a project schedule, all absolutely there, and all the different modalities of learn it, try it, know it, do it. Right? Most of you guys are probably familiar with those things. But here's how I used it. Here's the practical use case. I used to run project managers through a training class, right, and onboarding to leverage PPM as a technology to do their jobs. But I knew, just like all of us, we're going to forget so much after we walked out of that training class, after you walk out of here as CA World. So how I leveraged Kappa was to reinforce the things that I had trained them on, right, in that concentrated 2-day session. And I would tell them in the training class, full disclosure, we're going to walk through this at your pace. You're going to walk out of here confident, knowing your projects, knowing how to navigate the tool. And the first time you call us as a help desk, we're going to help give you the right answer. But the second time you call us, we're going to ask you, did you go to Kappa first? Did you see if that was there? Did you try and, we're teaching you to fish, did you try and fish for yourself? And we may still give you a little bit more help. But by the third time you call us with a similar type issue, right, we're going to say, no, the answer is definitely there, you knew that, right, and we're pointing them back. So use it as a way to enhance your PMO function or your support organization, because that helps give you scale. And for that reason, I think it adds tremendous value.
I think there was one more question. Did somebody have
Anybody else have a question? We have time probably for one more.
Hi, my name is Nikunj. I'm from American Express. I have a question to CA. What's the roadmap of CA for the new UI? Because as we see, most of the customizations in our environment, we cannot utilize it on the new UI. So what is the roadmap, and how soon can we expect all those attributes at least to be coming on the UI of the project or investment?
Sure. So in the 2 minutes and 40 seconds we have left, I'm probably not going to be able to do justice to that question, considering that Kurt spent 45 minutes on it. However, the short snapshot version of that is that we certainly understand that configurability is a key part of the value proposition for PPM and why it differentiates from other products. So we are reintroducing it at a point not in the not too distant future. I can't say if it's going to be the release after next or the release following that. It'll probably be some in both. Part of what Kurt mentioned in his session is the problem of making sure it's intelligently designed, allows you the power without letting you get yourself into trouble, and do things like create queries that run 3 hours, which means you can't log in because it takes 3 hours to run to get the thing back. So the idea is that how can we provide all the power within reasonable constraints? And so that's what we're spending a considerable amount of time looking at and designing now. And the thing that we're most interested in or most intrigued by now is this idea that Kurt was talking about toward the end of his presentation, which is the idea that if you package, and I'm going to use, this is for the PPM folks in the room who have been with us a long time. If you take page layout, partitions, conditional subpages, security rights, and templates, and you mashed them all together and said, okay, I want to set all this up, and then you can use it for that project, and you'll see only certain fields, certain functionality. You'll only have to fill out certain things. Other things will be defaulted behind the scenes. You never have to worry about them, and you can deploy that differently for different parts of your organization. That we think is actually going to be a real win for people because it makes it much easier to use, much easier to deploy different parts of your organization, and allows you to actually focus on getting the value you want back out. So that's really where the roadmap is headed.
So 15.3, yeah?
Yeah. I think, Brian, the other
In the
thing,
near future.
the other thing that I've seen in
Fully
talking to
efficient.
customers is if you look at this beautiful graphic behind us, the goal is when all this is available is you don't take that nice square and put 100 fields on it, because that defeats the purpose of making this easy to use. And we look at what most of the attributes are is categorizations for portfolio classification, for reporting. That doesn't necessarily need to be something that the project manager sees. So when we say today, oh, those attributes are not available through the new UX, people look at that as a drawback. In some cases, that's actually a positive thing. Let the PMO manage that configuration. Let the project team do what they need to do through the new UI. We don't necessarily want to expose that even if we can.
Right now they use the link because there's a direct classic link that goes to the to the classic PPM. So they switch when they have to do those customization.
And I think that's all the time that we have for this afternoon. A big round of applause for our panel.
And we'll be hanging out over here, some of us. So if
Yeah.
you have any additional questions, want to ask one-on-one, we'll be over here. Thank you.